Thank you very much for coming along to our very first Warman O'Brien Fireside Chat. For all the listeners, this is Olivier Leconte. He's our Global Head of Clinical and Statistical Programming at Janssen R&D. Somebody I've known for, going over 15 years now, I think, Olivier?
2006.
Wow. Okay, there you go. Spot on then. But yeah, thank you for coming along today. I really appreciate your time. I thought this would be a good opportunity for you particularly to showcase statistical programming as an industry, and especially within pharmaceutical. Also, the challenges we have of obviously finding these type of people, but also how do we inspire statistical programming within pharma for future generations. I think with the Olympics going on recently, it does inspire people to want to be an Olympian, etc. So I thought it'd be apt for this time as well. So for all the listeners, could you give us a brief overview of your background and how you got into pharmaceutical and specifically within this industry?
Of course, Mark. So I'm French. I graduated with a master in mathematics applied to informatics and computer engineering back in 1998.
Wow.
And one of, as many students, at some point I was looking for a student job to, get a bit more money at the end of the month. And actually got hired to archived paper CRF at a CRO. And I didn't know what was a CRF. I didn't know what a CRO was, just like huge piles of paper. But then I started to discuss with people around, and they were doing some math and some computer stuff. And so I got a placement there. And at the end of my placement, they hired me, and I started to work for various pharma companies. In France, I worked for what is now Sanofi, what back then was Aventis. I worked for Servier for many years. And then at the very first fuse, I met you. And I say, hey, I would be interesting to work in the UK. And you say, okay, give me your CV. And we got, I think, a couple of interviews. And one of them was at Roche. So I moved to Roche, UK. With the entire family, which was a pretty amazing opportunity. The first part of my career was more on the development, what I call development of SaaS tools. But Roche was an opportunity to start to work on portfolio. So I worked at Roche in the UK for 4 years in immunology. Then I moved to Roche Basel to work on oncology for a couple of years. When you're in Basel, you often cross the Rhine. From Roche to Novartis, back to Roche, back to Novartis. So I crossed the Rhine and went to Novartis. This is where, for the first time, I was head of programming for part of the Novartis portfolio. After many, many reorgs, I had like 3/4 of the entire portfolio except oncology. So I stayed at Novartis 6+ years, a lot of reorg, a lot of changes without changing offices. And then 3 years ago, I joined J&J, and I'm still based in Basel, working from the former Actelion offices. And yeah, here I am.
Wow. Okay. What a journey so far then.
Yeah.
So what inspired you within the pharmaceutical industry then? What choices did you make to get there?
As I say, I think, the first thing was just, that student job. And I was like, oh, it looks cool because they're doing, they're dealing with data, which is what I wanted to do. But I was not thrilled by the idea of doing, physics, data, or bank. And I felt like, hey, it's human data and I can have an impact. So I really loved that part. The second thing, when I got my first assignment at Sanofi, I was straight into a global environment. And I loved that. I loved, being able to speak English today, working with people from all around the globe. And I think pharma really, when I started 20+ years ago, that was one of the few industry where you were able to do this. And then I think, the reason I never moved on it's because it's keep changing. I think a lot of people have this image of pharma is a very, it's a big tanker that moves very slowly. Some of that is true, but at the same time, it's moving all the time. There's always a new technology. There's always a new compound. There's always a new disease. If you think about the last 20 months with COVID, I can show you the industry moved really, really fast. So
I think that's
so
definitely accentuated the farm industry. Obviously, traditionally it's been a lot slower, but I think COVID has definitely speed up the whole process.
yeah, and you know, so and ultimately also it's an industry where there's a lot of benefits. You know, working in it's yeah, good money, good benefits, nice places to work. So that also helped in why I stayed in the industry.
Excellent. And what have been the main challenges, and how have you kept motivated?
I think the main challenge is so the first challenge is maybe that impression that it's moving slowly. When maybe if you were in bank, or if you work in now the Google, the Facebook of this world, they implement technology so fast. We're still using SAS, which is 40 years old software. Even now we're using more Python and R, but and so one of the challenges is to realize, well, there is a pace which is different from other industry, but there's a reason for that. It's because we're dealing with human, we are dealing with patients. We cannot get it wrong, because then the impact is way more than just a bad quarterly result. It could impact people's life. So I think that's one of the first challenge when you got into that industry. You need to learn that pace and realize what is slow and where you need to go and move fast. I feel the second challenge is that it's a truly global industry. And so if you are not ready to speak different language, interface with different cultures, and ready for understanding, hey, there's not a French way or British way or an American way. You need to know them all, because, and especially as you grow in your career and you become, for example, a manager, you need to understand employment laws in the different countries. You need to understand the culture. More and more we worked with India, we work with China, we work with Japan. So that can be one of the challenge. There's nothing that is preparing you to that when you are in college. And I think the third challenge is that quality. I'm sure a lot of I'm sure if you work in nuclear industry or plane industry, so well, quality is essential, and you cannot get it wrong. But for us, it's even more true, and especially if you look at some of the news and all the questions around the various vaccines that are on the market and so on. How do you ensure that we deliver the best quality product? And so when you come with a computer engineering and mathematics, you understand the idea of qualifying your program, but the impact it has on human life is huge. So here again, it's something you learn through experience and by listening to more experienced people, following all the processes that are in place, and that's one of the challenges. It took me some time to understand the depth of it.
Are there any particular projects that you'd be most proud of? Anything you can share with us, whether it be recently with COVID and that, or anything more?
I think it's hard to pick one. I think
there's been so many.
There's been a few. I've and that's the interesting part for me is also there's been also a few that never made it to the market because they were not efficient enough, they were not safe enough, they were stronger competitors. So I think it's hard to pick one product. For me, the two things I'm the most proud of is it's maybe more on the people side. All the people I've been working over the years. I think I've been able to create a network, people like you and others, like people, I'm chatting with at Fuse, and people, who have hired at some point and now have, similar role than mine, if not bigger. And, for me, it's an interesting part of the job. That's maybe the part of the job I prefer the most is the development of people these days. And I think the second thing I'm the most proud is, my contribution to the industry for things like Fuse or the Programming Council that I've been co-running with many others, which is looking at, okay, how can we work as an industry? We are competitors, we don't, but at the same time, we're also trying to answer the same question. So being able to have that cross-industry collaboration for me is also a good testament that, you know, we're not just working for the company, we're really working for the patients, and therefore we need to work together. And so we had example on COVID, we had example on statistical computing environment. So yeah, my cross-industry experience is something I'm very proud of.
I think I've noticed that over the years, where obviously people is one of the most important things, and obviously the war for talent within statistical programming, and how do you encourage these people to work in the industry. I know I've been to Fuse and presented to students about why the pharma industry is better than maybe banking or other sectors, and yeah, it's still one of the challenges. But what advice would you give to the future generation of statistical programmers, and maybe what would you have done differently along your journey?
I think, you know, the first advice I would say to people who want to join pharma is not just a man in a white coat. You know, every time you have a brochure about any of a pharma company, they will show you a guy in a lab with a white coat. Well, there's a lot of people like me just, you know, in front of a computer most of the day. So first, have in mind that you can join the pharma industry because it's all about data, whatever it's clinical, pharmacovigilance, data science, pure IT. There's a lot of opportunity if you have I would say, a data science degree. Consider pharma. And the second advice I would give for people who wants to, you know, join that industry is be curious, because you know, you cannot just be computer oriented. You need to be human oriented. You need to be biology oriented. You need to understand the disease area you will be working on. And then coming back to one of my previous points, get ready for some actions, because yes, you might be working for 2 or 3 years on the same project and people might say, oh, it's a long time. Yeah, but actually there will be so much happening. So be ready, be versatile. Don't be afraid to ask questions, to connect with clinicians, pharmacologists, statisticians, data managers. You know, and one of the nice things of being a statistical programmer is you are in one of the function where you're going to touch on so many different, you know, other areas. You'll be working, you know, you'll need to understand the biology, therefore you'll need to talk to the medics, you'll need to understand the data, so you'll need to talk to the data managers, you'll need to understand what's going on the site, or to follow the, you know, the different path the patient can go through from the data point of view. You'll need to talk with clinical operation. But then you'll need to talk with IT. So it gives you that opportunity to work with so many functions. So yeah, get rid, you know, I say, despite the appearances or the rumors, yeah, get ready for some action. So be versatile. And our industry also is changing. You know, we're doing more and more R, we're doing Python, we're doing other languages. SAS is still there. But, you know, I think it's very interesting. And, you know, and one thing I often say to my folks, hey, when are we moving to data science? I always answer, we've been doing data science for more than 20 years. So, but it's just we call it differently.
Yeah, exactly. And just one final point. Obviously, I've been involved in Fuse for a long time and exhibited and presented. Obviously, this year's Fuse is still going to be virtual. How, for somebody who's not familiar with Fuse, how would you sum it up itself? And, you know, what are the benefits of going to a conference like Fuse?
I think, you know, if you are interested in pharma industry, Fuse and data science, Fuse is the place to be. Because you'll have both very practical, technical streams about how to do a specific task that, you know, you will be asked for. But you also see people who talk about, okay, how do you manage, develop statistical programmers or data scientists in the life science industry. You'll have very, you know, all the vendors, all, you know, the entire industry will be there. So I think, you know, and it's the pharma industry is both very big and very small. So it's also an opportunity to create those cross-industry connections. So yeah, for me, you know, I've been attending virtually. It's not the same. You still get a lot of the presentation and so on, but the best part of Fuse is all the things that are happening outside the meeting rooms, where you connect with people, with some friends, with people you may have work or people you don't know, and say, hey, I love your presentation. Can I ask a few more questions? And for me, you know, that's the best part of Fuse, is that networking opportunity.
I agree. Well, thank you very much for today, Olivier. I hope to see you
Welcome.
at Fuse at some point in the future, whether it be this year or next year. But thank you very much for your time.
All right. Thanks, Mark.
Thanks, Olivier. Bye-bye.